So one of the first things that David brings up is the idea of prayer.
Okay.
And they make the point that if there's no God, then, well, prayer is kind of pointless.
Seems pretty straightforward, right?
Right. On the surface, it sounds pretty logical. Why waste your time talking to someone who isn't there?
Right.
But a letter of reflection comes back with this really interesting analogy.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What is it?
They say, imagine if you didn't believe in oxygen.
Okay.
Would you still breathe?
Well, I mean, I guess I'd have to, right? To stay alive.
Exactly. Breathing is essential for our survival, even if we don't consciously think about the oxygen that makes it possible.
So they're saying prayer could be the same way, even if you don't believe in a God.
Yeah, and they're pointing out that at David's argument kind of assumes the very thing it's trying to prove,
Yeah.
that God doesn't exist.
Ah, so it's a bit of circular reasoning.
Exactly. It's like saying unicorns can't grant wishes because they're not real. Well, duh.
Uh-huh.
If you start with the assumption that they don't exist, then it's not much of an argument, is it?
No, not really. So what else did David have to say?
Well, then they sort of throw out this question like, does it even matter if God exists?
Oh, I've heard that one before.
I know, right? It's almost like they're saying, let's just move on, nothing to see here.
Right.
But at light of reflection doesn't let them off the hook so easily.
What do they say?
They come back and say, hold on a second, the implications are huge.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
They argue that if there's no God, then morality becomes completely subjective.
Meaning there's no right or wrong, just individual opinions.
Yeah, basically. And they go on to say that without God, there's no inherent purpose to existence either.
It's like we're just random accidents in a random universe.
Yeah, kind of bleak, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
And they also point out that without God, there's no ultimate justice.
Interesting. So the good guys don't always win, and the bad guys don't always get punished.
Right. And this isn't just theoretical stuff. This has real implications for how we live our lives, how we treat each other, the choices we make.
It paints a very different picture of the world depending on whether you believe in God or not.
Absolutely. Now, things get even more interesting when David accuses anyone who criticizes atheism of basically trying to convert them.
Oh boy, here we go.
Right. And at light of reflection, points out what they see as a double standard. They say atheists often critique religious beliefs, but the minute someone challenges their
It's
beliefs,
suddenly off limits.
yeah, like how dare you question my lack of belief?
Haha, right.
And at light of reflection also brings up the idea that young people in particular might be swayed by atheistic arguments, especially those that aren't well thought out.
It sounds like they're concerned about the future generation.
Yeah. And
Where does the conversation go from there?
well, then David makes the claim that all religions are man-made.
Oh,
Like they're
wow.
just inventions created by humans to explain things they don't understand.
That's a common argument. How does At Light of Reflection respond to that?
They don't let that one slide either.
Of course not.
They basically challenge David to back up that claim with evidence.
What kind of evidence?
Well, they bring up the fact that similar monotheistic beliefs have popped up in different cultures throughout history.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
They're basically saying, how do you explain that?
Yeah.
If religion is just a human invention, wouldn't you expect it to be more diverse and culturally specific?
That's a pretty compelling counterpoint.
And then they go on to talk about the impact religion has had on the world
Yeah.
compared to, well, in their view, the lack of significant contributions from atheism.
Okay, yeah, I'm following.
And then they made this interesting distinction between what they see as a divinely protected message.
Like the core teachings of their own faith.
Right. And all the other religions out there that might have gotten kind of distorted or manipulated by people over time.
So they acknowledge that there might be some human interference in how religion has played out historically.
Exactly. It's not just a black and white issue for them. Now, one final observation from At Light of Reflection, and this one really struck me as insightful.
Oh, tell me more.
They noticed that a lot of times atheists seem really angry in online debates.
I've seen that too.
And they pose this really interesting question. If God doesn't exist and religion is all just made up, then why would atheists be so passionate about discrediting it?
Why would it matter so much if they didn't believe in it?
Right. You'd think they'd just shrug it off and move on with their lives.
Yeah, like whatever, you believe what you want, I'll believe what I want.
Exactly. But it seems like there's often this real intensity there, this need to convince others that they're wrong.
So, at light of reflection is basically implying that maybe, deep down, some atheists are grappling with the idea of a godless universe.
Yeah, like maybe they're not as certain as they claim to be.
Interesting. How does the conversation end?
Well, At Light of Reflection ends with this final challenge. They say, if atheism is so fulfilling, then why the need to convince everyone else that life is random and meaningless?
Whoa, okay. That's a pretty heavy question to leave hanging in the air.
Yeah. And I think it's one that each of us has to grapple with on our own.
For sure.
So, from the role of prayer
Yeah.
and the implications of a godless world
Yeah.
to the debate about proselytizing and the real passion behind these arguments,
Yeah.
we've seen that this discussion about atheism and belief goes way deeper than just surface-level argument.
Absolutely. It raises all sorts of questions about what it means to be human, what we value, and what we believe in.
And I think that's what